Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 373, being recorded on October 28th, 2015. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Allyn Malmontano.
And from an undisclosed location, I am Sebastian Peak.
It's the same undisclosed location you were in last week, though.
But I still haven't disclosed the location, right?
You don't know that that's the same location.
It's an igloo.
By the way,
built out of
great
cases.
point, because these boxes go with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't even know if he has a forehead or not.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
He could be a conehead, and we wouldn't know.
I was, but it changed.
As a baby, they formed
Yeah.
it down. Yeah.
How is Babby formed?
Wow.
I haven't
Good job,
figured
guys.
that out yet.
Yeah, you haven't. If you haven't, that's a problem.
It just
You should
kind of
look into
happened
it.
for you.
I don't know. I was
into
drunk.
That's always
Someone was drunk.
That's always
at
the
least.
best answer. Welcome to the show, everybody. So it's almost Halloween. Alan, what's your costume?
I don't have one.
Oh, man.
Lame.
Ken, what's your costume?
I'm going as Fry. Futurama.
Okay. All right. So my costume is many years ago, like 4, I bought a gorilla costume. And it was very expensive. So I swore I would use that every year until it wore out, all the hair fell out of it or something. It always adds some variance to it. Trying to think. I was like Superman gorilla last year.
Okay, I saw a picture of that.
Yeah.
Did your wife ever dress up as like Diane Fossey and your digit?
No, I thought about having...
She could carry around her head.
Yeah. I thought about having Emmeline dress up as a banana this year. But then I thought it would be better if I just didn't go like trick-or-treating, because that sounds like a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So if I can get 1 year without going trick-or-treating, then fantastic. I think I'm really lazy this year. I haven't had time to do anything, so I'm just going to take like the biggest. It's either going to be the biggest size Bengals jersey I have, or the biggest size UK jersey I have, and I'm going to be Sports Gorilla.
I don't think that's going to work.
I think Sports Gorilla is going to work fine.
I don't think you're
I
going to
take
be able to fit one of your jerseys over
a gorilla costume.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to go with a football jersey that maybe somebody bought that was oversized. I put some tape over the back name and write something creative and
Okay.
in Sharpie.
Maybe.
That's what I'm going with. Josh, you have a costume?
Yes, I'm going
Lex
as my
Luthor.
parents' greatest disappointment.
42 years in a row.
43 straight.
43. Damn. I had to. Damn.
Now,
I
he
was
wasn't a
close.
disappointment for the first year.
That's
but
right.
Then expectations slid.
Yeah, that was.
Unless
wasn't
they
able
wanted
to
a
talk
girl,
yet.
and then he could have been a disappointment in the first year.
That's true.
Well, maybe they didn't know.
Sebastian, what's your costume going to be?
I was going to do like a thing with my son, but he's too young. I was going to be Luke, and he's going to be Yoda strapped to my back from Empire
That's next
on
year.
Dagobah.
Next year.
Next year, for sure.
When we bought Emmeline's Wonder Woman costume at Build-A-Bear, they had a Leia. I said that. I did say that before. I've told that story on the podcast, I'm sure, right?
I think so.
She won a costume contest at a Halloween party earlier where she was a Wonder Woman. We got the costume from a Build-A-Bear. They had a Leia. A lot of the Leia costume was in the shoes. The shoes for the teddy bear don't fit human feet. So we
And
just,
that metal bikini, it's just kind of embarrassing.
yeah, it's not really child appropriate.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem. It looks like we do have the YouTube stream working. Is that correct, Ken?
Yeah.
So if you are a person watching on Twitch, I saw a couple of people in the chat saying that Twitch was harder on their bandwidth or their decoding or something like that. You can go to pcper.com or no, youtube.com/pcper and you can find the YouTube version there if you want to as well. So that's where we're at here, guys. It's almost Halloween. We're ready to go, but we still have hardware to discuss, starting with, well, actually, no. Again, if we were talking about the stream a second ago, we do record the show in a public fashion. We don't have a studio audience here because that's awkward. Ken is all the studio audience.
Yeah, just one.
We have a studio audience of one. He also pushes buttons behind the screen. But if you want to join us on the live stream, it's at pcper.com/live. There's nobody at that location that you're on there. You want to find the right button? There it is. Ha. Ha, he says, looking at his adapter thing. So pcper.com/live, and we can go to this page here. We get a subscribe page if you go to pcper.com/subscribe. If you need a little reminder, if you need something to give you a little heads up about, hey, we're going to stream soon, this is where we do it 1 to 2 hours ahead of time. We actually do have, I think we're going to have 2 live streams in the month of November with the disappearing Allyn. Oh, thanks. We have, 2 live streams coming. One of them will be AMD, the other one unknown company so far, but I think we should have 2 more that will include prizes and giveaways. So if you don't sign up for it, you're probably dumb. So
Yeah.
you should sign up for it.
Free stuff.
So let's talk about hardware. That's what we're here to do. This week we had an SSD launch from Samsung.
We did.
World leader in solid state technology. Sure, whatever. Definitely sales leader in solid state technology.
Pretty much.
So the 8 series, 800s, 40s, 50s, that's all old crap. It's garbage.
Well, they're still selling it.
No, it's garbage.
Okay.
New hotness, SSD 950,
Well, yeah.
right? They released the 950 Pro, and if you're watching the video version, I'm holding up a stick of gum that I'm claiming is an SSD.
22 millimeters by 80 millimeters. Stick of gum.
It's that's a pretty big piece of gum.
It's a nice piece of gum.
I mean, it's not very chewy, but
It's a little
keeps its
expensive.
flavor for a long
It's
time.
a little expensive.
So they're M.2 SSDs. That's kind of the biggest change this time, probably.
Yep. And they're not M.2 SATA.
Okay,
Because,
yeah, you're
because
right.
there were M.2 SATA parts that they did make
Sure.
in the 840s.
Yep.
These are M.2 PCIe. And they're also NVMe.
Right. So they're super fast.
And they're super fast. They're
Not
actually,
available in 2.5 inch. We should just get that away right away. Like
Yes.
the
you
950
can't-
Pro, as far as we know, is not going to be sold in a 2.5 inch SSD traditional 2.5 inch drive
Right.
SATA variant.
Nor do I think there's even any, like, that's going to be like the 800 series.
From yeah,
They're just
if
gonna
they even
keep
update
that-
it at all, it'll be an 800 series branding probably.
Yeah, yeah.
The reason is because SATA is a bottleneck. The 850 series does just fine saturating that and addressing everything that you could possibly want to do over a SATA connection.
About as within the limits of that interface, yeah.
So they needed to move on to something new and different.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. So these are NVMe drives,
Yes.
which is the whole new protocol of changing things from AHCI over to NVMe.
It's
Over
just to
PCI
reduce
Express.
the overhead within the operating system on the OS
But
side.
Intel already did that, right? They released the 750 series NVMe drives, but
Yep.
they were add-in cards. They were PCI Express plug and or a 2.5 inch, 9, 12,
it had a U.2 connector.
12 millimeters thick.
Yeah, it was like 12 or
2.5 inch
15.
drive, but not your traditional 2.5 inch
Right.
drive. So they went NVMe in a different route. The Samsung, at least for now, is only selling this in this form factor.
Correct.
You can get an adapter, I guess,
You'd have to get the adapter from somewhere else.
somewhere else. They don't sell it with it.
Yep.
So is the drive fast?
The drive's very fast. It's very, very similar in performance, actually, to the SM951 NVMe,
Okay.
which was the kind of really hard to find part.
It was an NVMe M.2 part that like only showed up to OEMs essentially.
Right,
And
right.
The places that did sell it, they were selling OEM specific parts. It was never a retail release.
Yeah, it was never a retail part with like warranty through Samsung, anything like that.
Right,
It was just,
right,
you
right,
know,
right.
you're getting the equivalent of like a white box, whatever, or in some cases not even in a white box.
Right.
Part from from some other vendor that got their hands on a batch of them. Very similar with one major difference, and that is that these SSDs use 3D VNAND, whereas the SM951 still was using their planar MLC.
Okay.
Okay, so it helps them on their power consumption a little bit, right? Not a huge change because Samsung decided to keep the performance way up
Right.
on this particular part. So we're talking, rating of 300,000 random read IOPS, 2.5 gig per second reads, 1.5 gig per second writes on the half a terabyte model. It's a little bit lower on the 256 gig model. They have plans to release a 1 terabyte model of this when they introduce their next version of VNAND, which is going to be 48 layers instead of 32 layers.
Just allows them to make it a little bit more dense.
Yeah, and I think they want to stick with that same exact design. So in other words, they would need to fit that 1 terabyte of storage capacity within 2 packages,
Right.
2 chip packages, which is pretty crazy. Just to think that now you're fitting a terabyte just across, like it's half a terabyte in one just chip package.
10 cents a
right?
gig is going to happen, guys.
No. It's going to take a little while. So, just for those familiar with looking at any of the benchmarks around the web from the SM951, if you were kind of lusting over that and trying to find a good deal on it, well, you don't really have to worry about that anymore because these are basically those, except a little bit better, and much more available, right? Because these are going to be, retail. Actually, I think they're shipping now by this point. If not now, probably tomorrow, I think. What was it, the 29th or 28th?
29, 28, yeah, it might be today.
Yeah.
I'll check.
That's when the ship date was for pre-orders on Amazon and Newegg. So, I mean,
Now
really,
it
it
says
just
November 1st, but whatever.
yeah.
Of course.
If you just kind of walking through our kind of normal testing, the short version is like low Q depth performance. These actually walk all over SSD 750s. So in other words, like just, you know, for example, we have an HD tech, which just hits the drives with a sequential, really low, like just Q depth of 1,
Right.
really small transfers.
Yep, that's the first one
right?
I showed.
These drives are actually beating, or at least neck and neck if you're counting both of the capacities. Actually, the 256 gig capacity is almost identical in performance in this particular test with
the SSD 750.
With the SSD 750, that's a 1.2 terabyte version.
Yeah.
So you know it's not a matter of how many numbers of dies there are, you know, for that controller to talk to, and that's with this controller being an 8-channel controller versus the SSD 750, which is an 18-channel controller, and it's still able to, you know, pull that off. So obviously the raw number of channels you have is not necessarily gonna win you anything, especially in the case of just like consumer kind of stuff. Now, I'll caveat that with SSD 750 has enterprise pedigree. You can hit that drive at Q depth, like scaling all the way up to like, you know, 512 IOs at the same time, and it will continue to ramp up, where drives like this will actually have, you know, hit their saturation point.
I mean, if you look at like a YAP sequential reads, it looks like the Intel SSD 750 is a little bit higher, like it's like 2.55 gigabytes per second, while the 512 gig 950 Pro is kind of 2,400 megabytes per second.
Yeah.
You know, or so.
So I mean, they're really close.
It's really
and just throughout the benchmarks, throughout the typical like our normal benchmarks that we'd run, you'll see like the half a terabyte model and the quarter of a terabyte model of the 950 Pro kind of like trade blows or come in like slightly above and slightly below the 1.2 terabyte SSD 750, right? So just depending on the capacity, right, because the capacity of these models does affect the performance,
right.
You know, partially because you have only 2 packages worth of chips on the thing versus the SSD 750, which has like, I don't even remember. It's like, I think it's like 16 per side or something. It's, yeah.
All right.
So there's that. So good performer all around.
Very good performer. Like,
very good performer.
Just to reiterate, like significantly faster than a SATA SSD. Any SATA SSD you can get.
We had some people ask, like in the comments and other places, and just to try to relate them to that, if you took, say, 3 or 4 very high performance SATA SSDs and you put them in a RAID 0 on an Intel chipset, right? That's kind of the territory you're in.
Okay.
Right? You're basically, you know, around 3 or 4 of them worth. As a matter of fact, if you're talking about like raw throughput, you'd actually need more than that, and the Intel RAID controller like just is bandwidth limited at around 2 gig per second, so you can't even go in a straight line speed as fast with like the best RAID you could throw together compared to just one of those tiny little SSDs, right? If you think about that, it's pretty cool, right? Don't eat the SSD.
So, how is this as good, if not better, as an 18-channel controller? Is it just in the controller tech, or is it the extremely low latency VNAND, or
what's helping it?
Both?
What's helping it is the VNAND helps you with latency per IO, right? Which doesn't really matter on how high you're scaling it. If your per IO latency is still very short, even if you ramp it up, you know, the ramping up portion of it is really more a matter of how efficient is the controller at being able to handle a really, you know, deep queue worth of stuff. How well was it able to organize all those commands in a way where you're not going to let any one of them take too long, right? Actually, the SSD 750, if you go really crazy high on queue depth, again, now you're in enterprise territory, it's actually better at kind of regulating that stuff, but that's not, you know, no consumer workload will ramp up 950 Pro high enough to where that's actually an issue, where it's not able to juggle them as effectively as a, you know, because you have to be like Q depths higher than 128, which is 128 things simultaneously being requested of the SSD at the same time, right? And then the other thing to consider is, as fast as this goes, your system will have a hard time even throwing that many at it in order for the queue to grow that large, because they're getting responded to so quickly. You know, you're fighting a losing battle even trying to get it to ramp up on the queue, right?
So you also had a page on here that looked at latency testing. Do we want to touch on that at all? Like
We can just
real quick?
briefly.
So you're kind of starting a new testing methodology, latency distribution, latency percentiles, and we have a whole bunch of really odd looking graphs.
Yeah. This is something that's going to work its way into pretty much all of our reviews, consumer or
Sure.
enterprise, just moving forward. But for this article, I figured we had it ready enough to actually kind of show people some stuff with it. So I figured, why not? And I just chose random writes, QDEV32, just to keep everything consistent. And QDEV32 is kind of like probably the worst case write I/O you would see going to an SSD in a consumer setup. So I just picked that, and I tested a whole bunch of different things, right? And I laid them all out on these charts. And all they're showing is just the latency distribution. And the key here is that we're not just looking at 1 second averages. You might have seen reviews elsewhere around the web. I've tried to avoid doing that. I don't think we've ever done a review that just did like latency average each second all plotted like over time. Because I tend to not like that because it's kind of deceiving. Because if you look at a 1 second average of what an SSD does, there's like could be a couple 100,000 IOs within that 1 second. And half of them might be awesome, and then a quarter of them might be kind of mediocre, and maybe like an eighth of them or something is like way off in the long latency. It'll get lost in the wash of the average. Right. So if you're going to ever show like real latency of an SSD, you need to show the distribution. You need to take into account every single IO.
So we equated this in a previous video to how we do GPU testing with the frame rating methodology.
Yes.
Right, where we are looking at individual frame times, not average frame rates. We're plotting those frame times, and we're looking for instances where things are slower than they should be or faster than they should be at zero, and trying to figure out why those things are happening and how that affects performance. This is a similar thing to what you're doing here. The graph is maybe a little bit more difficult to read because we're looking at logarithmic scales and a ton of numbers, really. But if you look at the graph that I brought up here, which is the latency distribution that has all these SSDs on the right, and what's interesting to note, it's like in the legend we have all these different SSDs, and in their description is the actual the rated performance of this test. What we claim is the IOPS for that drive.
That's the IOPS that we're seeing.
4K random read QDEV32.
Yep.
But this is the distribution of it. Like, so what's the orange line here, for example, because it's the one that stands out the most. What is that? The
orange line was the Revo.
OCZ Revo 350.
Yep.
So here's how its latency is distributed across its total score, right? And what we want is the more of the bell curve you have to the left, the better, right?
Well, ideally, you just the perfect case would just be like the narrowest spike you could possibly have,
right? As
and
far
the
to the
furthest
left
to the left as you could possibly have,
right?
But that's not really going to be the case, especially if you do a test with a kind of a higher QDEV, like QDEV to 32. That's going to spread them out.
Yep.
Because some of those IOs are going to have to wait in line, right? If two IOs that are going to that drive happen to, the controller decides that those two need to both go to the same die, right? One of them has to wait in line. And it has to wait in line until that other one finishes writing to the flash before it can go in, right? And that gives you kind of what's on the right side of the bell, right? And the reason that it's just a nice kind of smoothish kind of bell is because that doesn't happen all the time, and when you take everything into account, they all spread out into that kind of a thing. So
I want to show the other graph as well. Like, so that's kind of
so
like
all those bell curves can be confusing to look at. So to make things much simpler, and probably the thing that will be presented more often in articles in the future, is just the latency percentile.
Right.
Okay. And that is how far worth of latency, what latency range does a given SSD take for you to reach all of its IOs falling into? In other words, the ramp will start to go up from 0 and start ramping up towards 100%, and then basically it's as if you added up all the area under the curve of all those different bells. That's what this is, and it lets you see very clearly. Okay, what's the shortest that this particular, let's take that same Revo 350 for example, and that shortest latency falls into the point where it kind of knees and starts ramping up from 0, and then it just kind of like eventually slopes off and eventually hits 100%, a little bit more to the right. But you can see it now compared to all of the other ones, and you can see how its distribution compares to all the other ones.
So it's further right on the scale, meaning it has a higher latency per IOME, and it's a slower drive.
Yes.
Right.
And not only that, but again, remember this is a logarithmic scale. But because it's a logarithmic scale, we can do really cool things like include first generation SATA SSD, which is actually that extra gray line like in the middle.
Vertical.
Which is basically vertical. And then we can even include things like hard drives.
Yes, the yellow, blue, and green line.
The yellow, blue, and green line on the same chart. And realize every time you're going across a major increment on the bottom of that scale, each major line represents times 10. In other words, 10 times as long that you have to wait, right? So if you look at where that cluster of PCIe SSDs falls, you're actually, 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude,
right?
Slower for hard drives.
So, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this. We could make a whole hour-long podcast about it, but this is something that will be included in further reviews. We'll talk about it more on this and then kind of what it means. To kind of sum up the 950 series, pricing wise, we're looking at 68 cents a gig for the 512 gig model.
Yes.
78 cents a gig for the 256. So that makes it $199 for the smaller drive, $349 for the bigger drive.
Yep.
And that's $349 and 68 cents a gig. It's fairly high compared to SATA SSDs.
It is fairly high, but that's the best performing SSD.
But it's the fastest SSD that we have.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say it's faster than the Intel SSD 750?
The half a terabyte one, I would say, is pretty much just wins.
And it's $350. And the 400 gig Intel PCIe SSD is what, $420, $430, something like that. It's over $1 a gig for the lowest capacity. So you're getting more capacity at a higher performance, and that's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah. It is. It's very, very good.
1 terabyte version coming this year.
Yep.
Or next year. I'm sorry.
Early next year.
Yeah.
And then there were some people that kind of griped about the warranty being only 5 years. Even the first generation, or not first generation, but when the 800 series Pro drives came out, they initially had a 5-year warranty. Samsung, pretty soon after the launch, bumped it up to 10.
I wouldn't assume that they're going to do that with these, though.
I wouldn't think so either, even just based on...
Because they've clearly had that experience before.
Well, there's that, and then there's... I think 10 years is kind of too long anyway. Like, for a company to try to support any given product for 10 years is kind of...
Hey, look, man, if Kia can do it, or Hyundai, or whoever does it...
Well, they're the same company.
But that's just the drivetrain.
But at least it's something. I don't know.
No,
I don't think... I would never say that that them making a warranty for 10 years is too long. Like, if you told me a company that maybe you wouldn't think would be around in 10 years was doing that, I get you. But Samsung will be here in 10 years, even if they're only making refrigerators.
Sure.
But they'll be here in 10 years. So I think that's a drawback. Yeah. But again,
what's
for me...
What's the longest part that you've ever kept in your computer?
Yeah, it would probably be a hard drive. Honestly.
Really? I would think it would be a sound card, and that'd be about it.
Well, nobody has sound cards anymore, Josh.
Also, asking us is kind of a
we're different. Like, it's I would say it's monitor first. Probably it's like longest tooth product.
Not for Allyn.
Not for Allyn for sure. I'm talking about general consumer. But I bet there's a lot of people that do what I have done in the past, which is when you upgraded your system, you brought your old hard drive with you. Because you didn't want to move all the data, you want to leave it behind, whatever it was, and so you carry around multiple hard drives through multiple upgrades along the way.
And I mean, for this, some people might
it's
even
harder
have
to do that with PCIe.
Some people that really want this particular SSD being M.2, some folks with other PC hardware might actually have to get an adapter just to future-proof them for the moment,
right?
To be able to connect it.
Sure.
I was going to ask about that. Does the performance suffer at all through an adapter, like a by4 PCIe adapter?
No, I tested the half a terabyte model for this article on an adapter.
Okay.
So there you
now,
go.
is that one push the limits of by4 then? Does it technically kind of creep into by8 territory or no? on reads?
No. It's I mean it's getting there, but
2.5 gigs. So 3 gigabytes per second?
It's like 3 or 3.2 is what it
to
works
get
out
to
to.
by 4 PCIe 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, it's approaching it, but it's not. It's clearly not just flat out bottlenecked by it. The bottleneck is somewhere back, probably just in the controller itself.
Right.
So if you're on like a Z7 or a Z68 board and you're running a 2600K and you only have Gen 2, you might not be able to get all the way there on by 4 Gen 2.
Right.
that is
Wouldn't
true.
be.
You're gonna saturate your Gen 2.
Yeah, because that's
never wanna
2 gigabit. per
But
second.
remember, you're only going to saturate it when you're going like in a straight line. Like
So interesting. We'll talk about the Surface stuff earlier. I did an ADO test on the Surface
yeah,
Pro 4 today, and it pegged at 1.5 gigs per second read speed. And it's a 256 gig NVMe drive. So that's what? PCI Express
By 2.
by 2, I think.
wow. You think they only gave it 2 lanes, or it's running, or maybe it's running at 2.0 for
It's not
power.
running at 2.0. I bet.
It might be running at 2.0.
It might be
for
running
power.
2.0 for power. Also, the writes were very slow. Like the writes, 300 megs per second.
We'll have to do some more digging into that. But
1.5 by 300 is a little
That
bit
might
odd.
also be like a firmware tuning thing for power.
Yeah, because writing is more power intensive.
Yes.
Yeah, it might be.
Yep.
We'll check on that too. All right, so if you want more information on the 950, which surely you do, it will be for sale according to Amazon on November 1st. Go to PCPro.com, check out the review. And if you're going to buy one through those special links on the last page. That helps us out through the little commissiony, salesy thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about something else, because we talked about that for a long time. ROG Swift PG279Q G-Sync monitor.
Uh-huh.
So we talked about this when it launched the first time, when it launched the second time, and now that there's a review here, we can talk about it. So this is a 2560 by 1440, 27-inch monitor, IPS screen, 165 hertz refresh rate is what they rated at. Now you have to change a couple settings in the OSD, and it's technically overclocking to push it from 144 to 165 hertz refresh rate, but it's a dead simple process, right? You have to go into the OSD.
Yeah, you hit a
It's
couple
the first
buttons.
menu in the OSD called overclocking. You say yes or on.
You could almost step all the way through it without doing an up and or down
Right.
or anything. Like just default,
Right.
enter, and it just like goes to overclock mode. Yeah.
So this is, if you look at the photo of it here, it's like the same industrial design as the original ROG Swift. It is very well built, very nice form factor, but
Yeah, form factor.
form factor, plastics. Like it's got like red lighting around the ring on the base. It rotates. It's
There's no
got height
gloss.
adjustment.
There's no gloss anywhere.
There's no gloss anywhere. It's very stable. It's very strong.
Yep.
It's not, doesn't feel cheap in any way.
They
Much
added,
like the original Swift did.
They added the ROG logo is also lit along with the circular circle.
The light
part
in
of the-
motion,
of
which
the
still
bezel.
doesn't make any sense to me, that naming scheme.
And you can turn that off if you don't like it.
So like I said, IPS screen, very high quality device here in terms of image quality, color reproduction. Did fantastic out of the box in terms of how well the color was
the
reproduced.
color was really good right out of the
And
box.
then after calibration, it got a little bit better.
Yep.
But you can see here, like the back of it, it's the same angular design, very kind of aggressive gaming styled ROG monitor.
It's
I think
pretty
it
much
looks really
identical
good.
to the first Swift on the outside.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. The buttons on the side are identical as
Yep.
well to the original Swift. So if you had an experience with those, I love the little joystick, this little red part right here. That's how you navigate through the menus and stuff. It's way easier than using anything else
It is.
that is out on the market.
And it's actually reversed. Like it's because it's
Yes,
it's out
like,
the back, but moving
you-
your finger to the right actually moves the cursor.
well,
to
it's how you're facing.
Yeah.
They were smart enough to do that. That
Yep.
could have been a real annoyance had they gotten that wrong.
Yeah, that would be bad.
In terms of inputs, it has DisplayPort, obviously, for the G-Sync capability.
Mm-hmm.
But then it has an HDMI input as well that does not support variable refresh. It supports 25 by 14 at 60 hertz.
Okay.
And it does actually go through the G-Sync module. I did confirm that there's an input that's going into the G-Sync module. It just doesn't support VRR.
Right. It's just kind of passing it through.
It just kind of sends it through. So
Yep.
if you want to use it on a system that doesn't support it, you want to hook it up to a cable box or whatever you would do
could
with
have
that.
like
a
anything that's
Yeah.
an HDMI device.
laptop
like,
that has HDMI out but doesn't have
you switch
DPL.
between the two.
Yeah,
Well, no, I mean I'm talking like TV type things, like Chromecast or something.
yeah, that's true.
Right.
You could do that.
Yeah.
The OSD is great. We talked about lots of functionality there. Overdrive was fantastic.
Overdrive was among the best.
So this
I've
is a
seen.
screenshot of overdrive off. This is when it's to normal, where there's like literally no artifacting on this.
I mean, we're talking like
all.
I was pixel peeping.
Yeah.
Literally, like of
Pervert.
because we took the photo macro enough so that we can actually pick out all the pixels,
Yep.
and like there just wasn't a ghost or
Yep.
just nothing.
It was impressive, and this is
Yeah.
on extreme where you get into the reverse ghosting, which is, you don't usually want to do that.
Yep.
Color calibration really good, as I mentioned. Viewing angles, it's an IPS screen. They're fantastic.
Yep.
This pattern I find interesting in the middle when you look at it from you don't see it when you're looking at it. It's from the camera.
Yeah, it's from the camera.
But it's still interesting to me. And like I said, this is kind of the extreme. I'm up and I'm above and I'm to the right angle and still everything
And it
looks-
is an IPS screen, not an MVA screen, so you're going to get a little bit of glow on like black backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah, but it wasn't a lot. Like we saw some people comment in the article or in the comments of the article, hey, check for IPS bleed and stuff.
There was some bleed. Yeah.
Yeah,
but it was pretty hard to pick out. Like we actually had intentionally had to go like black background.
Well, that's how you
and,
look
like,
for it, right? And
yeah.
it wasn't enough that I noticed it in any other thing.
Right.
Now, that's something that could differ unit to unit as they get shipped out and
That's true.
things move and rustle around. In terms of the overclocking, this is how it works, right? Like you go into the OSD here, you basically turn it on, change the max refresh. You can adjust that from 144 to 145, and then by fives up to 165. If for some reason you don't want to go to 165. But the monitor is, I did verify with ASUS, the monitor is warranted at 165. So you should go to 165 if you're going to buy this display.
Yeah. It does replace that 144 number with whatever you
Correct.
set it to. Right.
Yeah. Now, here's what's interesting, right? So you're moving, there are existing 144 hertz monitors, IPS even.
Yep.
The one you have, the Acer XB 270 HU,
Yep.
is a 144 IPS G-Sync display.
Yep.
I honestly expected the difference in going from 144 to 165 to be pretty much zero, to be negligible, to be like, well, okay, it's faster. Now you can say it's faster, whatever.
Right.
But both of us agree that the
There's a different feel
using
to
it on even in Windows, like, well, I guess I would say especially in Windows.
Especially in Windows, yeah.
Where moving the mouse cursor, moving windows, interacting with things felt different from 144 to 165 in a similar way that 120 to 144 does, or even like 90 to 120 does, right? It was noticeable, and I didn't expect it to be.
You would expect that you keep going higher and higher, you would kind of get diminishing returns.
At some point, yeah.
Right? But this, and I walked into it completely expecting that. I was like, yeah, I'm probably not really going to notice. And like almost immediately, just by moving the mouse around the desktop between 144 and 165, I was like, wow, it's kind of crossing some kind of mental threshold just for me, where it's like, this is like not even a refresh thing anymore.
It almost seemed like a constant.
Like it's just smooth.
It's hard to explain, but it definitely felt different, and not in a negative way.
Right.
Right. I think it felt odd, but I think you get used to it. In terms of the gaming side, if you're playing at a variable refresh, the 144 to 165 range is only useful if you're playing a game that goes into those.
Yeah.
those ranges.
If you were never hitting 144 before, it's going to be the same exact experience.
Correct.
Right.
Now, like I turned on Unreal Tournament 2004, right? A game
Yeah.
with a 980 Ti that we could push it.
And that was going 165.
and it would nail it, and it played awesome.
And looked pretty.
But there's
damn
also an
cool.
argument to just not even like enabling G-Sync necessarily and using it as a 165 hertz standard
That's true.
refresh rate. But you do have to have an NVIDIA GPU, I should point out, to use the 165,
To
a
go-
Maxwell NVIDIA GPU to use 165 hertz refresh.
And even you and I were actually looking at that too, because we were fired up the Pendulum demo
right.
at 165, and we were playing around with not having G-Sync enabled and trying VSync on, VSync off, and we could pick out the tearing or the judder.
You could.
The tearing was harder to see.
For sure.
It was probably almost impossible to see, really, when you're going that fast. But if you had VSync on, and I don't know why you would want it, but if you had VSync on, you could tell it was juddering.
You still could.
You could
correct.
still pick out the judder.
Yeah, like if you were running at 130 frames per second
Yeah.
and 165 hertz refresh,
You could
tell it was there.
It was probably still, I would say, just as obvious.
So if
Like,
you
that
have
was
the
very obvious.
I mean,
but
I don't know why you would ever
Yeah, you would
disable the G-Sync capability of the display if you had it, but there are reasons people will have other
Considering
reasons.
you have to have G-Sync to run this monitor at 165 hertz.
You don't have to have G-Sync.
Yes, you do. All of those GPUs that can run it at that refresh
you have to be able to
G-Sync.
support G-Sync.
Yes,
yeah, but you don't have to
true.
run. You don't have to enable G-Sync to run.
Yeah, but why
165
wouldn't
hertz.
you?
I agree. I agree. So pricing wise, $799 shipping first week in November.
Same price as the original
Same
one.
price the original ROG Swift launched at. It's the same price that the Acer XB270HU launched at.
Yep. And they
You can now get the
promised-
Acer for about $755 on Amazon. And the original ROG Swift, the 278Q, actually still sells for $670, so only $120, $130 less than this.
They promised us no supply issues. Well,
They
we'll see.
did. They did promise no supply issues. And you can take that to mean one of two things. One is they have a lot of stock. Two is, look, the initial super drive excitement of a G-Sync monitor
That
has
is
kind of
true.
been purchased and died down.
Yeah.
So while people are still excited about this monitor, the people that bought the original ROG Swift are not going to be very likely to upgrade to another $800 display.
I mean, take my panel, for example. I have the Acer panel. It's pretty close to the same piece of glass. It's IPS. It's
Yeah.
not 165.
Yep.
But, the display itself looks amazing. Sure, the bezel and all the housing it's
Yeah.
in, I think, looks like a toy. But, I'm not really looking at that all the time. I'm looking at, the actual piece of glass in the
Right.
middle, right? So I'm probably, if I didn't have that, if I was still on the original Swift, I would probably immediately jump to this. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't enough to get you off the Acer Predator then?
I'd have to be able to almost break even on selling the Acer one to justify it.
I mean, if you recently bought a $750 monitor that goes to 144 G-Sync, then no.
Right, that's what I'm
But if
saying.
you're in the market, say, Alan, you were a normal person and just had a 1080p monitor, and you were like, I'm going to spend $800 on a monitor tomorrow. Do you go Acer Predator? Do you go the new generation Swift?
What's funny is I would say that if not for the fact that I work at this site and was able to see these monitors, I might not have even bought the first Swift, at least right away.
Well, variable
Because
refresh is hard to describe. People just think
you really, really, really have to sit down with one for a few minutes.
If somebody said, will you spend $755 on the Acer or $799 on the ASUS, I would buy the ASUS.
Absolutely.
It just not even just because of the 144 to 165 advantage, but just the build quality advantage is there. And to be clear, he doesn't have the Predator version of the 144 hertz Acer.
Oh, okay.
It's just XB270HU.
It's technically branded Predator.
Yeah, it's branded Predator.
I don't know if it is because they're coming out with
with
an Acer Predator 144 IPS G-Sync that has
I know.
the more aggressive orange feet styling and stuff.
put
They
Predator
slapped
in
the
that
brand
name.
on it at some point.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay, I think maybe they took it off, but
It
whatever.
probably shouldn't be in there. I think they kind of backed away from it.
Yeah,
but
I think they're trying to save that branding for a different stylization. But so check out that review. That is something we've been looking forward to since CES. No, did they talk about that at CES? I don't think they did.
You got to see it?
No,
that was the
4K
that was the
one.
FreeSync.
That was the FreeSync one.
No, it was
yeah.
the FreeSync one.
Well, and the 4K
MG279
Swift.
And the 4K
before,
Swift, yeah.
before it was a FreeSync. But yeah. So anyway, that's the ROG Swift PG279Q. What the hell time is it? Oh Jesus. Okay, here we go. Oh wait, no, we did have this. There was one more thing on the ROG Swift. We did
Also from commenters.
About testing the power draw when you increase refresh rates. They said, when you run it at 165, you actually draw more power. And I thought, that sounds stupid. That's probably not true. So I hooked up the PG279Q and 980 Ti, and sure enough, that's exactly what happens. You can see on this graph here.
It was not just 165, it was also 144.
Right. As soon as you jump from 120 to 144, the monitor power doesn't go up substantially, like 1 watt, but the system power goes up from 76 to 133 at idle in Windows.
Yep.
Right. And
Not even in a
to
game.
165, it goes about the same. And you'll see this 165 peak at 201. That's really I saw several instances where the idle power consumption would go up to 201 for 10 or 20 seconds at a time and then come back down to 133.
I wasn't able to
137.
repeat that, but
it was odd. So I'm not so much worried about that one as much as I am the 137.
the lowest you would see was 137.
Now here's why it happens. Well, the reason it happens is that this is a measure of clock speed as reported by GPU-Z. Now, so this is your GPU running on 135 megahertz, and right here is where we switch from 120 to 144 hertz, and your clock speed comes all the way up to 885 and just stays there.
Huh.
So when you run your refresh rate at 120, your GPU gets a clock at 135. When you run your refresh rate at 144, your GPU has to go to 885.
Yep.
And as a result, you see that power consumption increase. You know, the fans start to come on. Like, it took a little while, but the fans did come on our EVGA card eventually. GPU-Z says you're running at 30% of your TDP level.
Yep.
At idle in Windows. So that's disappointing. Here's what happens on an AMD card, an AMD Fury, with a similar ROG. That's not really an ROG Swift. I didn't take that out. MG279Q monitor. It's their FreeSync 144 hertz IPS screen. At 120, 70 watts at the wall. At 144, 71 watts at the wall.
And it doesn't change.
Above that. And it doesn't change substantially. And your clock speed stays at 300 across the board.
And I was able to confirm separately a similar thing happens with the 680. Except
GTX 680.
GTX 680, except it doesn't go all the way up to 800 and something. It sits at like 550 or something like that. But it is still drawing more power.
So the reason this occurs, at least my assumption is, so there's a pixel clock, there's a GPU clock. The pixel clock determines how much bandwidth it can output. So pixels times refresh rate times bit rate, all that stuff.
Yep.
Crossing from 120 to 144 hits some threshold in this combination of GPU and driver and monitor, where it goes, we don't have enough bandwidth to push that out. We need to clock the GPU up. Unfortunately, it has to clock the GPU up a whole lot to do it.
In the case of
the NVIDIA hardware.
Well, but it's actually Maxwell versus Kepler is even a little bit of a difference.
Sure,
too.
yeah. But it still went up.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's like the next up from the bottom power state.
And AMD's doesn't do it. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what's causing it, if it's a requirement. Like, we hooked up the MG279Q to the NVIDIA hardware and ran it at 144, and its power consumption didn't go up.
Yeah.
So is it a G-Sync thing? Is it just a...
Yeah, we're not sure.
We don't really know yet. We're still figuring out. I got a lot of questions into NVIDIA, but they're not super eager to talk about it.
But it was interesting that we were able to push a panel at the same refresh rate and pixels. And it
push the power consumption.
And it didn't go up. So we're trying to figure out the real answer.
Essentially, there is a fix, though, if you set your panel to refresh at 120 in the desktop, and then in the GPU driver, there's a flag for run at maximum. Oh, it is?
It is the default. Okay. So if you're concerned about this, you just found out about this and you're like, oh, that's why my system was running, or maybe you didn't know, or maybe you already knew, but all you got to do for the average person that hasn't messed with their NVIDIA control panel at all and just has defaults in there, just set your desktop back to 120. That's the only change you have to make.
Yeah.
Then your desktop experience will still be reasonably fluid. You're at 120. But the default in NVIDIA control panel is either application controlled is not the default. The default is maximum refresh rate when you're in a game.
Huh. I didn't know that, actually.
So it just clocks up
and I didn't know that either.
When you launch a 3D application.
So all I had to do was I just dropped my desktop to 120 at the house, and then just to test it, I just fired up a game, and then and I looked at the OSD of my panel at home, and it just was at 144 in the game, and then I backed to the desktop, right back down to 120, and the power dropped back down. So, a very simple workaround, but we're still,
you shouldn't have to, but
you shouldn't have to.
You can do this.
We kind of still want to get a little bit more detail out of it, but that's where we're at right now.
All right, so that's the monitor. Moving on, real quick, Steam Link. We talked about this a little bit last week. We posted a separate video now that looks at the Steam Link and focuses not on the Steam controller necessarily, looking at the $50 device that allows you to stream up to 1080p 60 across your local network from your gaming PC running Steam to a different TV. It works fine. The same hurdles exist for this game streaming technology as any other game streaming technology. There is a latency addition to streaming video and then capturing input and sending it back and then rendering that and then sending it back, encoding it, sending it back to the network and back to your TV. That I don't know if you'll ever get around.
Yeah.
Maybe eventually you will. You'll have networks and interfaces that are fast enough that happens instantly.
Other stuff needs to change.
Maybe they'll have last second warp on the local streaming device, right? I mean, that's how you can fix it, right?
Yeah.
But the devices would have to have more compute in them than they have now. Actually, I take that out of the podcast. I'm gonna go put that in a patent filing now.
Patent that crap.
So I mean, it's fine. Like I played Dirt Rally, and I played, what else did I play in that can that was fine? Rocket League, played fantastic, right? They're games that require not a whole lot of precision, at least especially the way I play racing games. But like a first-person shooter like BioShock Infinite, I could immediately tell that there was latency through that capability. So do either of you guys, Josh, Sebastian, have any experience with kind of like the streaming gaming stuff at all? Have you tried to use like Steam and home streaming from PC to PC?
Negative.
No. Well,
based on this experience,
we're chained to our PCs. And
yeah,
we like
that's
it that
true.
way.
That's true. My kind of impression would say like, don't run out and buy this device, thinking that
you know what?
Gonna...
You've never sat on my couch, so you don't know the pain and agony.
That's true. Yes, the Steam Link will work with a Steam computer running Linux as long as you have Steam on that machine. It just looks for PCs on a network,
and it just has a regular USB dongle that it maps out like normal controller.
Yeah, I mean you can use a Steam controller, you can use an Xbox controller,
you can use a mouse and keyboard. Yeah,
you can use mouse and keyboard if you want to, right?
You could, yeah.
It's a fairly functional device. It's just my kind of first impressions with it were
it's not any better than Steam and home streaming. It's about the same.
It's not any better than the GeForce Game Stream.
It's a $50 device that does the existing Steam and home streaming, so you don't have to have another PC. It doesn't change anything. It's just cheap.
Yeah. And finally, real quick on the review side, Lee posted a review today of the Thermaltake Toughpower DPSG 850 watt power supply, and it looks like that. 850 watts.
Shiny.
Yeah.
I like the red line.
It's I think we used one kind of like this on that Gigabyte system giveaway that we did. So somebody we know has a power supply very similar to this. You know, do you like the gold? Do you not like the gold? It's kind of, there's a lot of personal preference there.
Gold is chintzy, but the red and black is nice.
It's not real gold, I should point out, just in case people are maybe concerned.
But it looks like a nice cheese grater.
USB integration, like the Link, sort of.
Yeah, but not as good at implementation software-wise.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of cables there. Length looks pretty decent. I don't think we know who the actual OEM is. It did get a gold award. The only kind of weakness was only one of the 12-volt EPS connectors, right? So if you had a motherboard that maybe could support 2 of those 8-pin connectors, sometimes workstation boards would do that, but even some really high-end consumer boards do that as well. So, and it's available up from 450 to 1,050 watts in this range. So if you're looking for a power supply, how much is this one? Let's see. $199 on... No, it's a retail. You can find it on Newegg for $154.99. So that's not too bad for an 850 watt power supply. And there you go. Check out that review if you need a power supply. We don't have an advertising break here today, so we're not going to talk one.
Okay.
You guys want to... Anybody want to pitch anything to me?
Josh does.
Josh, you got something to pitch? Josh's advertisement. Josh must have thought we were getting ready to go into an ad break.
I thought the chair might turn around Dr. Evil style. But
no, the Inspector Gadget guy. What was that? No. Dr. Claw?
Yeah.
Dr. Claw could have been.
Josh is pitching an entire bookcase full of computer components for sale.
That's true.
I could
look behind him.
Please go to joshcheck.com for... Yeah.
So, I thought you were trying to sell people cars, Ryan.
Sebastian has
that's right. This episode.
Here's today's podcast is sponsored by the InWin D-Frame Mini. It's a mini ICX enclosure that I reviewed about a year and a half ago. I liked it a lot. It's a lot of money. So if you've got the money, buy it. Status symbol.
That's awesome.
Also, this episode is brought to you by Ryan selling 3 cars.
Yeah.
So if you would like to purchase a 2013 Chevy Volt, a 2007 Chevy Corvette with only 9,800 miles on it.
Yeah, because you didn't have fun with that car.
Or, which is a good reason for somebody to buy it. Like, I didn't beat it up.
Totally didn't.
Or a 2007 Toyota Tundra. Contact Ryan Shrout. All reasonable offers considered.
What are the miles on the Tundra?
83,000.
Whoa. What happened?
That's low.
A lot of highway miles.
Low.
That's pretty low for a 2007.
I mean, for Ryan,
Kentucky
though?
to Dallas?
Yeah, I drove to QuakeCon every year.
It is the Tundra.
Oh, okay.
It
is the Tundra that has carted thousands and thousands of dollars of hardware that has been tossed
in the back of it
at the audience.
I have spent a lot of time in that Tundra.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ken went to Dallas like 3 or 4 times in that Tundra.
Ken has dirty knees as well.
No, there's a mattress in the back.
You'll never get the Ken funk out of that car.
Nope. Never.
The Ken what?
It's not a selling feature.
You'll have Ken with you wherever you go.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So now moving away from that, were you guys excited about the Surface crap? Surface Pro 4, Surface Book.
I wanted to know what GPU was in the.
We still want to know.
I got bad news for you.
We have it right over there, and we still want to know.
So I actually purchased, and I want to make this very clear, I purchased a Surface Book and a Surface Pro 4.
With your own money.
My own dollars, because Microsoft didn't want to send me any. Because
we're not like the New York
But I knew they were really
Times
interesting devices that people were going to know about. So I got.
Did they ever send you an Xbox or an Xbox 360 or an Xbox One?
No.
No, then you're
not on the list, man.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a full review of both these devices. We posted a quick video perspective, which is basically me kind of going over, here they are, here's how they showed up, and here's some of the quick differences. But the main point of the video was to ask people, like, what do you want to know? What do you want to see tested and compared between these two devices? Because I can already tell you, oh, hey, look, we're live now. That there are more significant differences between these than I thought, right? So the book, I ordered the Surface Book that has the discrete GPU in the base. It's an NVIDIA 384 core something. It's a Maxwell-based GPU.
1 gig GDDR5.
It's using GDDR5.
Oh, yeah,
5
1
gigahertz,
gigabyte of GDDR5.
1 gigabyte of memory.
And it's roughly twice as fast as what's in
a quick score from you from like 3D Mark Skydive. Is that what it's called? Skydiver?
I think so, yeah.
The discrete GPU scores about 2x what the integrated GPU does.
Yep. Okay.
So
I mean,
it's about 2 times faster than the Intel HD
520.
graphics 5200.
Ryan, that's almost double the
520.
performance.
Yeah.
It's almost double the performance.
Yeah.
Right, and you get that in this, little package. Right, I played Rocket League on it. I played some Skyrim so far. I played some BioShock Infinite. Did I? Yeah, I did. And that was on the Surface Pro 4, which has the same integrated GPU but no discrete GPU.
Right.
So, I mean, it's possible to do that. It's odd. Like, it's a 3x2 display.
Yeah.
And a lot of games go, Yeah. They don't know what to do. Some of them don't. Like, you should just be able to select, play at 1080p and then stretch it and letterbox it or whatever you're going to do.
But you could just set your system display resolution to 1080p before you went into the game, right? And it would handle that?
I don't know if you can do that. Like, there's as we've been finding as we look with the devices, there's a lot of things that are different about these systems than you're used to. Like, you don't get an NVIDIA control panel in the same way you expect to get an NVIDIA control panel with the Surface Book.
Or an Intel control
You don't even really
panel.
get an Intel control panel, which is really odd. Like, I was like, I need to globally disable VSync. And it's kind of like, well, you can't really do that. And the only information I really get at anybody is like, well, panel self-refresh is a thing. So maybe it's more complicated now. Maybe you can't just turn off VSync. So there's different things to consider there. But so far, I really like the devices. I'll say that the keyboard, I wrote an editorial on the Surface Pro 4 type keyboard, and it's way better than I thought it would be.
Okay.
But the Surface Book keyboard is even better than that. It might rival my experience with ThinkPad keyboards. But there's a lot to get into on that. Any of you guys, Josh, Sebastian, have any thoughts or questions on where I'm at with that type of stuff?
About that hinge.
Yeah, that's my question too.
Okay, so the hinge is there. It works. It works fine.
Take us through real quick, Ryan. Take
Yep.
us through. And
what
for the
happens when you
listeners
pop it out
later on the
when you're running
podcast,
it?
visualize it for us.
The
opening the laptop. How does it feel? Is there a lot of resistance?
The biggest thing I noticed that was different than what you might have thought is that you can't open it flat.
Yeah, you can.
What do you mean you
The
can't?
hinge.
Wait, what do you mean? You can't fold it all the way back?
The hinge will not go
Right. So
180.
yeah, it can't lay flat, and
You
that's
can't lay it
that is
flat.
that
How
is
close to flat?
not very.
Like maybe 30 degrees.
How much
shy of
past
it.
90 degrees?
Oh,
It's a
it can go. It
significant
can go
amount,
decent amount
but it's
past
still my
90.
primary. Not my primary. It's one of the problems I have with 2-in-1 designs.
Yeah.
Is that when you put all the electronics and cooling in the tablet part, which is
Right.
up top, then you have this point where they don't want it to tip over.
Yep.
Right, so they just don't let the hinge go back any further. And with some devices, I had a Dell something at one point where it was so bad it was kind of an unusable thing.
I remember that one.
And then I had another device that did it okay.
It only went to like 100 or maybe 100.
Yeah, it was very narrow, and I thought that's not good.
Yeah.
Like, and the Surface Pro 4 does not have that problem, right? Because of its kickstand design, you can push it very flat. But then you have the added problem of, well, you have to have a place to put that kickstand
Yep.
as well, right? So if you have it on your lap, that metal kickstand has to be on your lap as well. Or if you're in an airplane,
increasing the footprint in the Y direction a lot.
Yes, you are. Yeah. So it bends back not as far as I would like, but further than other devices. So I also have to see what it's like.
It's pretty close to my MacBook Air. We figured out it's probably 15 degrees shy of my MacBook Air being all the way open, which I think it's usable on my lap. We were having this debate in the office. I think it's pretty usable in the way that I normally have a laptop on my lap.
I personally don't think Apple laptops
when you open it up, or does it kind of catch at places?
No, it's very smooth. No, I mean there's no like resistance issues or kind of jerkiness to it or kind of stutteriness to it. It opens very smoothly. The ejection process, reconnection process is pretty good. I've had one or two instances where I hit the button to eject it and like the light goes green, but I don't get the little notification on the Windows pop up. And I think I tried to pull it off once then and it went, no, blue screened.
Surprise, hot removal.
Yeah, wasn't a fan of that. But what I found is if you hit that and it goes green, but you don't get the pop-up. If you just wait a few seconds, it relatches, and then you hit it again, and it tended to work.
That's probably like a hot fix.
They're pretty good with firmware updates on the Surface products, so I imagine they'll address that.
Yeah, and again, but on the Surface Pro 4, I've had two instances now where the keyboard that's attached to the keyboard type cover is no longer recognized, or the touchpad isn't recognized until I detach it, reattach it, and then it works fine. So my guess is that they have been very quick to fix those types of things on Surface Pro 2 and 3.
Thurrott noticed the same thing with his, because it's a software-based unlock, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah. But when it does work, it works well. Like it's a smooth process. The transition between using discrete GPU and integrated GPU, you get a flash of the screen, and then everything kind of works.
Yep.
And I think because of panel self-refresh and this kind of Optimus-y type thing, even though I don't even know if Optimus from NVIDIA is a product.
That's in this?
Yeah. It's brand new.
It's like Microsoft is taking very close control of it on purpose. Like they want it to be as good of an experience as possible. So if you have any more thoughts or comments or whatever, go to that post on PCPro.com, look for that video perspective on it, and leave me. I'm reading all the comments on that page. We've got a good amount of them down here so far about what people want to see, what particular games they want to see, how to test the SSD, that type of stuff. So there's some specific requests here on testing the pen implementation on these devices, which so far in my experience has been pretty awesome. So yeah, we'll see. And I have a feeling one of these two will be my new laptop. I need to decide which one I'm going to actually grace with that statement. And then I'll have an XPS 13 for sale if anybody wants to buy that. 3 cars.
But it's got a dumb sticker on it.
And a laptop. That sticker comes off, dude.
It's also got a webcam that looks up your nose.
Don't tell anybody that. I'm trying to sell this thing.
Yeah, that webcam sucks.
Just put some tape on it.
I'm trying to drive the value down so I can buy it. Don't you know how this works?
What an ass. Okay, moving on. 8-bit audio explained. Did any of you guys watch this video?
I did not.
That looks interesting.
It's pretty good.
So, Josh, did you watch it?
No, but I'd like to. I just haven't had time the last couple weeks.
So who is this guy, the 8-bit guy who we talked about a couple of his videos, like how he described old school graphics and how they're being made.
Yep.
He does the same thing with audio, talking about how they first made 8-bit sounds and how they worked with what was the first thing they did? It was like a tone speaker. And if you change the voltage to the speaker in a way that it wasn't meant to, you can make it a little slightly higher and slightly lower, but then you had to like the amount of processing power that took made it very difficult for any programmers to actually implement any of that type of stuff into their games. It's a really interesting discussion. You can either find his video, he's the 8-bit guy on YouTube, or you can find the post on PCPro.com here where we have his thing. Anytime you start a video with loading up a tape on a Commodore, it's probably going to be pretty good.
Commodore music was
probably
a pretty awesome thing.
Yeah. And he is part of the Texas EV Club, apparently. And also, he's way shorter than the guy next to him that's talking.
All right.
A bit.
Wow. Somebody should have got an egg crate. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. All right, what's up next? This is short. Sebastian.
A very short PCB.
I see what I did there.
Yes.
What am I looking at, Sebastian?
Well, Computer Base in Germany had this first. ASUS has worked on apparently a slightly custom version of the Nano with a white shroud over the fan. And the report also said it might be a custom PCB as well. They didn't have a lot of details at the time, just some leaked photos. So if you are going with an all-white theme, and I know we looked at a titanium board last week, you could go all white. You could find a white power supply, white GPU, white case.
That's true.
I mean, I don't know why you'd need an extra short graphics card. And I've seen some other white cards out there, but if you want the Nano in white, it's coming. That crossed my mind, but
I like the way it looks. Yeah, honestly,
looks nice.
I just feel like at this point, now that they've figured out a way to engineer whites that don't turn yellow with heat, they're just starting to do it for almost everything.
Yeah,
I agree.
Thank goodness for BASF. They make the products we use better.
Yeah. Yes, marketing is working clearly on Josh. Yeah. Last but not least, Samsung has a 6 GB per second 1 million IOPS SSD in a demo.
Yeah, that was at Dell World. They were showing it off. They've got two versions of it. The full PCIe, which I think is by 8.
It is.
Was pushing that speed. It's the PM1725. And the SATA Express version of it is, of course, a little bit slower. But yeah, they didn't have a lot of details about this thing. They were just kind of showing a few best case scenario tests, like straight reads on it that were capable of producing about 6 GB per second. And 1 million IOPS with, 4K random.
4K random, 1 million IOPS from one device.
Yes.
That's
how many IOPS does the fastest 950 Pro we just talked about go at?
The rating's 300,000. In reality, it's like 200, 220, something like that.
It's only 4 of these.
Yeah. The SSD 750 is rated to at 440.
I can't wait till there are gaming laptops with 4 of those 950 Pros in them in like a RAID 0.
MSI will have them.
Yes, they will.
That GT72 you have has 2 128 gig NVMe Samsung NVMe drives in RAID 0.
Yes,
that's true.
So
we're close.
Yeah,
we're close.
I mean,
they'll probably sell you one with 4.
In those. The problem is if you want to be able to RAID those together and have them as your boot drive, you have to be behind the chipset, and then your chipset is the DMI bottleneck. So which you hit just by adding a second one in sequentials. Anyway, unfortunately,
so get your shit together, Intel.
Well,
make it happen.
Need the DMI to be even faster.
So do it.
What they
got the
money.
Come
on, Intel.
Well,
Francois, get on.
We're laying down the gauntlet on the PC Perspective.
Need
podcast.
more I/O.
The problem is you kind of you're getting you're stealing Ram's thunder when you start getting into
There's
10 gig per second
with
and
that.
stuff.
Good. What's RAM done for us?
It's not that. It's that you would spend
pretty much everything.
It's that you would spend because RAM, at least you could read. Think about it. You can read from RAM that quickly, but it's a completely different interface with literally 0 overhead, right? It's it's designed to be direct as possible, right? Whereas even NVMe is it's reduced overhead, but there's still overhead, right? So it gets to the point where if you
wait till they have an NVMe 2 port on every SSD or on every processor.
Yeah, I mean, so what was that?
How many NVMe channels is on your new Intel 8th generation core processor? I have 4 NVMe channels.
You put some cross-point DIMMs in there, and you're good.
Well, yeah, that would be one way. Because you don't
just
have
solved computing.
Well, hey, you know what? SSDs still have cache on them. Why isn't this the same thing? You've got the cache of the fast RAM, and then you've got the I/O guys. Same thing as an internal to the SSD. You've got that little bit of DDR3 or whatever in there, and then the NVRAM.
When it comes to at least when it comes to IOPS, what was that system that we were using when we did the 5 SSD 750s?
X99 Deluxe.
X99 Deluxe.
5960X.
Haswell E.
Okay. But what CPU do we have in that thing? It was a
5960X, 12 core.
Didn't we do the 10-core Xeon?
No.
No, we did an 8-core 16-thread Haswell E overclocked.
Okay, so 8-core 16-thread CPU, right? I had every thread pegged simultaneously to hit 2 million IOPS.
Mm-hmm. See, we beat that stupid Samsung demo.
Well, yeah, but we had 4 of those running at the same time.
I didn't
to
care
hit that.
about that.
Imagine if you had 4 of the Samsungs.
4 of the same, but that's my point.
We were pegging the
Like,
CPU.
yeah, you'd have the processor pegged with just 2 of these as opposed to 4 of those. Like,
yeah, but that problem will only get better.
not really.
IPC improvements.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, so, yeah, as far as, like, CPU overhead per IOPS, like, that hasn't changed that much. Like, in years, actually. Like, it's gotten better. The same. It gets better at the same rate that, like, the CPUs get better percentage-wise.
Yeah.
Generation to generation. That's what helps that. Like, what you can get out of that particular metric. And that's only been, like, what? Like, 5-10% per generation-ish. Right? Like, from one generation to the next. As far as, like, raw CPU performance. Like, efficiency and stuff like that. So, that's, you know... You keep doubling the SSD thing, you just run out of CPU.
Alan, I'll just ask you later how to boot my entire system off of a RAM drive, and that's all I need.
Okay.
It involves
Load it off of a tape deck
Yes.
into RAM first.
Yes.
lots of batteries.
A tape.
Lots of batteries. And one more thing that we're going to sneak in here, although it wasn't on the rundown, Scott just posted his quick, like, little post that he got an Xbox One Elite wireless controller. I really want to try one of these out. This is the $150 kind of configurable Xbox One controller. You can see that's got these new paddles down here. It's got a brand new D-pad. The thumbsticks are now adjustable, not adjustable, but replaceable. Like, they have different heights, lower and higher.
Oh, there's the one that comes with the different.
It comes with those
right?
in like a case.
And a different D-pad.
Yeah, and a different D-pad option. It's like a full circle.
Huh.
Like, with kind of faceted look to it.
It's still spendy though.
It's $150. It's super expensive. But I
mean, it's cool.
I really want one, but I'll wait. Like, I just started the download for Halo 5 at home. It's kind of like it's not an accident that this controller launches like the same week that Halo 5 comes out. Right. And I don't need it because I don't play enough console games for it to really matter.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty cool, and I
It's
want
cool.
things.
It just seems really expensive, even given how cool it looks.
So far, I mean, he's just been playing around with it. He noted the D-pad felt a lot better than the Xbox 360 gamepad, and I know that the thumb pad on the Xbox One is awful, or the D-pad.
It's a lot better than the 360.
It is better, but it's still awful. It's like super clicky.
I think that's only
physical.
your day one controller.
I have 2 controllers that do that. I have my day one and one I bought. Like, I bought it day one,
Yeah,
but
I don't
it's
think
not
mine
a day
does
one
that.
controller.
Maybe it was the initial batches.
He does warn you that the controller's firmware cannot be updated without an Xbox One console still today, because they are still updating the Windows app for
That's
it.
a bit rough.
Yeah. But it's pretty neat, and he will have a review for us in the near-term future. So let's get to our picks of the week and wrap this show up. My pick so far... my pick today, rather, is my experiences thus far with the Logitech G933 Artemis Spectrum headset. This is the second of the 2 new gaming headsets that Logitech launched.
Yep.
With drastically improved drivers and sound quality. New ID and design to everything, new microphone design, and they have a whole bunch of cool new features on this. We talked about the G633 previously. That's the wired version. This is the wireless version. And one of the things I like is, I don't have it in here, but you can actually take the sides of the ear cups off, and like this one houses, you can put the USB dongle in it. Right, so if you travel, you might take it to your friend's house, you're going to a LAN party or whatever, you don't have to worry about losing it there or detaching it. And then on this side is the battery. So it's a replaceable battery.
Huh.
So you can either charge it through USB or you can buy like an
standard
extra battery.
Cell phone kind of battery.
I mean, it's shaped that way, but still has all the LED lights. So basically all the functionality that the 633 had, this has as well.
Okay.
But this can actually accept 4 inputs in total.
So you have the wireless.
Because you have the wireless. You have USB.
Okay.
You have
2.5 or 3.5
millimeter input.
Right.
And then you can actually pass that through the, like, what do they have? The RCA analog, like, basically for consoles.
Oh yeah, they have
the RCA pass-through device.
Okay.
Right. And so you can get a ton of connectivity through this. I can imagine a scenario where I would want to do that. but it's there. You still got the. I really like how the microphone now is complete. Like looks like if you don't want it to look there, it doesn't even look like it's part of it. You want to bring it out, you can do that, and you can
it's only
extend
active.
it and bend it.
It's only active when it's down.
Correct.
Yeah.
It deactivates as soon as you push it up, and there's actually like a notch you can feel.
Notch, yeah.
So you don't have to put it all the way up to mute it.
Right.
You just put it a little way up, and now you can actually feel where that place is. So far, pretty comfortable. A little bit tight on my head. I feel like there's something that will lessen as I wear them. The kind of the spring on it. Yeah. But like the cushioning is good. The sound quality has been fantastic. The noise isolation is pretty good. When I wear them, I don't have to listen to Allyn talk to me from next to me on the thing. And so far, so good. They're fairly expensive. These are the wireless versions are $199 and the wired versions are $149. But like I said, their push is to make those audiophile quality headphones that happen to be gaming headsets as well.
Yeah.
And they're much closer on that than anything I've heard from Logitech previously, or the Kingston headset, or anything else that we've had in recent past from a gaming headset point of view.
I wish
it's for sale now. You can actually buy these now.
I wish they had made the wire. They made both versions look identical, right? Like they're exact, almost the exact same housing from the looks of it. Right?
No, they are. Yes.
Yeah. I almost wish that they had made the wired version like sleeker, like less, taking up less space and looking less bulky. At least to give somebody the option of not having,
if you're of the mindset that you want people to like carry these headphones around and actually use them as like stereo headphones that they take with them on a plane or on a bus or on a trip or something,
right.
I mean, because these still very much have the look of a gaming headset. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And the LEDs don't turn on, necessarily when you. Like I can turn this on now, and I don't think the LEDs will turn on here on the wireless one. But obviously,
you can turn that off.
If you turn this off and plug in a 3.5 millimeter, it's still going to drive it.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll have more on these. I've been kind of waiting for this version to come out instead of doing like a review of the 633 on itself and then doing this because they're the same audio wise.
Notice any latency at all?
No, I haven't. Right there, it's using RF. It's not using Bluetooth.
Yeah, the Logitech specific, when you use their dongle, that always tends to be a very low latency.
It's been good. It's been good so far. And I found this. I should have been my hardware software pick. I found this really awesome app that I can't remember the name of that allows you to switch your audio device on the fly, like while you're playing back audio.
Like with the hotkey?
I don't know if it has hotkey support, but it's like in your taskbar.
Oh, okay.
You click it. And it'll bring up the 4 devices that I have attached, right? And it's like speakers or headset, and it will switch it like while you're watching a video, while you're playing a game. It does it in line.
That'd be handy for me, even.
Yeah, because I wanted to be able to use my headphones when I wanted to block you guys out and write and stuff, but without having to go into this control panel and go to the sounds. And do that. I'll remember what that's called, and I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up next week. Who's next? Josh.
Me.
What do you got for me? Ooh.
Yeah, this has been a terrible thing to me. It's called World of Warships.
Yeah,
it looks really good. It plays fun. It's not exactly a Twitch game, but there's a lot of strategy, a lot of thinking, and it's free.
I don't think it's Twitch when I think of Warships.
Is this from the World of Tanks guys?
Yeah,
World of Games.
Same guy, Wargaming.
Okay,
they're on top of their stuff.
And it's fantastic.
Is there a video here I can watch?
Can you play a nuclear sub?
Yeah, not quite yet.
Okay, because I'd be all over that crap.
So let's see what we got here. Look at that. USSR and German ships set sail.
Oh, they got some older ships.
So what do you control on? Is it an actual like shooting game, or are you kind of like managing the battleships?
No, it's a shooting game. You drive your ship around. You aim them through multiple ways. You've got, depending on the ships, you got torpedoes, you got artillery. If you're an aircraft carrier, obviously you've got attack aircraft, fighters, torpedo bombers, whatever. And you go on these large maps, and you try to sink the other ships.
Can I just ram into other ships?
Yes, you can, and you get rewards for doing so.
All right.
Is it driving wheel compatible?
That's awesome.
No, it is not. It is all keyboard and
Is
mouse.
there a USB boat wheel?
USB boat wheel?
Boat wheel?
I don't know what you call that. What do you call that?
But you can hire a cabin boy.
Call it the rudder.
Ooh.
So, Ryan, you've got one built in, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Allyn, save us.
So this came up, I think, just on our little backroom convo a couple months back. But with the Windows 10 stuff that I keep hearing about, like people not having their key or needing their old key or whatnot, or the new version not letting you use the old key if you do a reinstall after you your 7 or 8 key or whatever. So before you do any of that, you should use this thing and save your product key. And it's probably the simplest app that I found for that. It's just called ProduKey, like without the CT.
ProduKey.
ProduKey. Again, that's
probably what it is.
Probably how he wants it pronounced, actually. But it's like the simplest app, and it just like takes the key, extracts the keys from your system, and just presents them to you. And it's like, here's your keys, like for Office or for Windows. And that way, if you have an OEM machine, you don't know what the key is, your sticker's not on your laptop anymore. Get your key,
right.
So you have it, right?
So you can have it.
Save
simple. That key, dog.
That's it.
And no malware injections when you install this one?
No, none of that. Real simple.
That's only if you visit PCPro.com.
Yeah, that was a bad day.
Oh.
It was a bad day.
Yeah, by the way, that's hopefully not going to come back for those that
hopefully that's a done thing now.
Yeah. No, I was just referring to the fact that we led Ryan astray when we recommended a product key finder for him. And said, "Oh, get Magic Jelly Bean."
Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah,
that's what this was. That's what this was stemmed from.
It wasn't malware. It was
adware.
If you didn't uncheck and
on his personal laptop.
Yeah, like Ryan needed a product key, and like the other people in the chat was like, "Here, try this adware."
I haven't checked it. Just do it. Download it. Install it. It's fine.
And then when I saw that conversation later, I was like, No. This one. Just this one. It doesn't do anything else. It just gets your key.
Such is life. Such is life. All right. Last. You. Go.
Well, we already talked about some headphones.
Yep.
I have a pair of speakers here
All right.
as my pick of the week. And they're not new, but I haven't talked about them before. I have a pair of these. They are the least expensive audiophile quality bookshelf speakers you can buy. There's a reason that high-end magazines have actually taken them in and reviewed them. The guy who designed them, Andrew Jones, works for TAD, which makes reference quality like $80,000 speakers.
And he used to work for Pioneer, right?
He was contracted by Pioneer to do this. He used to work at CAF.
Oh, okay.
But he took his whole thing is concentric drivers. So they're on these little bookshelf speakers, you only have a 4-inch driver, and then above that is a 1-inch dome tweeter, but surrounding the dome tweeter, which you can't see in these pictures, is a 4-inch waveguide. So the two speakers are essentially identically sized.
Yeah.
And the way that they're tuned, you cannot hear the difference between the full range driver and the tweeter. They have the best blending I've ever heard. And even though it's only a 4-inch driver, this is a bass reflex design. There's a rear port. And if you put them relatively close to the wall, like within about 2 feet of your wall, you can get massive bass out of these things. So they sound far larger than they are, and they are just ridiculously good for the money. So if you have any kind of acceptable integrated amplifier or something to drive a pair of speakers with, these would make I don't remember if they're magnetically shielded or not. That shouldn't really matter anymore. They'd make a great set of like desktop monitors.
Yeah, because most LCDs don't rely on electron beams.
I had the experience this week. We had new carpet installed in our downstairs, and I had to completely disassemble the entertainment center.
Yep.
Move it to the basement. That
must have been lots of fun.
And then bring it all back up and reassemble it. I was smart enough eventually to get furniture movers, those things you put underneath for like the big columns of the entertainment center, and just kind of slide those to other rooms without having to take it downstairs. And one thing I did notice is I have enormous speakers.
Yeah,
like I have those
compensating.
Yeah, apparently I have those floor standing speakers.
Yep.
I bought them. Gosh,
a long time ago
from
a guy in a white van.
It was like one of my buddies was working at Best Buy and he was going to quit in 2 weeks. He's like, I get 40% off of speakers and stuff's like, I got to buy something. So I bought, I think the highest end JBLs they had at the time. They sound awesome, but they're really heavy. They're really heavy. And they have a warning on the back that's like, don't have your kid play around these speakers because it's just going to fall over and crush them.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Okay.
So anyway.
These Andrew Jones speakers have been on my list for a while. I bought bookshelves in a similar range a couple of years ago, so I haven't been able to justify it. But I'm looking for an excuse.
Well, now they're only $126.
Yeah.
Once in a while they'll go on sale. I bought my pair on sale at Best Buy for $99.
Ooh, nice.
Is there?
But
I've been meaning to ask this. Is there a simple PC out amplifier to speakers like this solution that's not as instead of having just a receiver sitting somewhere around your
the best
your PC?
One currently on the market would probably be from NAD. It's their digital 3020. It's $399.
Oh.
The PS Audio Sprout is probably the darling of all the magazines, and it's $499. But I don't like it because it has an undefeatable bass boost that the NAD
this
does
one
not.
Here, the NAD 3020, you said?
D3020. It's just a digital amp.
Yep. It's a digital amp, extremely high efficiency, and even though it's only rated at 2 times 30 watts, NAD is famous for underrating their performance, and it runs regardless of the impedance. It runs at 30 watts.
That thing do A2DP? It says it has Bluetooth music streaming.
aptX Bluetooth music streaming.
I've tested the Sprout. I have not tested this one.
iPhones don't support aptX.
I thought that was a brand name, not a standard.
And even I think you need a special app even on Android or something to push.
But this one does just USB, and it also has analog input as well. And it's fantastic for a super small amp. If you were spending the same money and you didn't have a space concern, I'd absolutely go with a Yamaha AS500. You can find them on eBay for around $300, or refurbished at accessories for less of $300.
So this is a digital amp that costs like $400-ish.
Yeah, it's Class D, but it's extremely
you
well
audio people are nuts.
to push
$126 bookshelf speakers.
pair of bookshelf speakers.
hey Ryan,
I drove those.
Give it a $120 Yamaha receiver that's large.
Don't you guys doesn't everybody just use earbuds still?
I just wish there was a cheaper.
Just buy a used vintage stereo receiver from the 80s.
You know what I had for a while?
And there you go.
Because I had a set of
That's what I do.
I had a set of bookshelf speakers as just desktop speakers for a while, for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I just had like an old car amp, like bridging off of the 12-volt line of my PC.
That sounds like
off of my power supply. I was powering a car amp, and it worked great. But it was like this cheesy car amp. But yeah. I mean, I get that this amp is awesome. I just wish that there was something.
How about $99? What can we do for $99?
If you look on Amazon at the little desktop amps, you're going to see stuff from FIO or FIO. I don't know how it's pronounced. Yeah. Or you're going to get just no name brands or Pile Audio, and they don't sound good.
Yeah, that's the thing. You need it to sound well. What's that?
That looks like it's meant to be installed in the car.
Audio input.
That totally looks like.
There you go. Boom, Sun, $26. 4
Hey, it'll
stars.
drive the speakers. You'll get sound.
You will get sound. You probably will not get favorable sound.
What?
But those speakers, the reason that I recommend them is because even though they're only $129, so you're thinking, super budget amp. No, spend all your money on the amp and then get these speakers for now, because there is nothing under $400 that sounds as good as these speakers. Yeah. The Cambridge Audio A26s for $400 sound better. And the Monitor Audio Bronze BX2s sound better for around $450, but then it goes all the way down to this $129 point. There's nothing really in between that sounds as good as these.
Yep.
Sebastian, I'm going to send you these Logitech headphones. You sound like the guy that should look at the audio side of it, if nothing else.
It's true.
You suck.
He's going to send them back because I want them.
He's got the golden. Okay. He's got the golden ears.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need golden ears for those.
You need better than
headphones.
ears than mine, or at least more distinguished.
Yeah, I've got
how distinguished are your ears, Sebastian? Anyway, that's the end of the show, guys. We're done. We're not going to talk about distinguished ears anymore. PCPro.com/podcast. Find all the back episodes. Subscribe to us there. Our podcast did get approved for the Google Play Music Store.
Awesome.
Yes. That doesn't launch, I think, until November 1st or something like that. But if you want to start getting your podcast that way, our podcast will already be available there.
Cool.
In audio form. So you'll be ready to go out of the gate. I'm so excited.
Will it go all the way back to, what is it, episode 36 you can still find on the
It'll be
stream?
the same RSS feed that has always been there, so it'll do whatever. So it just that should be up and running in the near-term future as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back next time. It's almost... I saw a Christmas ad yesterday on TV, a Best Buy Christmas time. Get your gifts ready. Son of a...
You know what that means?
No.
It's essentially CES.
It's practically CES.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we got to start booking. Actually, it's probably late. That's it, guys. I'm going to go cry myself to sleep. We'll see you next time. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Alan Malventano.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
Bye.